Hello everybody, thanks for watching Casey's Garage. Today we're talking about how to not die. This is episode 2. If you missed episode 1, please go ahead and watch episode 1 where I explain how to survive if your brakes go out. There should be a link in the description. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is if your car dies out in the middle of nowhere. Now, if you happen to have a small backpack, that would be extremely useful to keep in your car in case of this emergency situation. Now, if the car were to die out in the middle of nowhere and it's wintertime, then an important thing to have is definitely a blanket. You want to have a change of clothes because if it's winter and you got to get out of your car to try to push it out and you're wet, you don't want to end up with hypothermia, and a change of clothes could definitely help with that. Zippo makes a really nice hand warmer that's a lot more condensed and efficient, which means less space in your bag. The way it works is you put the Zippo fluid in it, just a small amount. It comes with a measuring cup, and you light it on fire, put the cap on, and then put the cover on, and that should last about 6 hours, and it uses a tiny amount of fluid. That'll help keep you warm, and warmth is definitely important. Another thing to remember is you're going to have to eat. Now, if you go to your local Sportsman's Warehouse or wherever you go for sports stuff, a lot of them have a section for people that happen to enjoy prepping. Now, what you want to get is it's a civilian equivalent of an MRE. Now, they have about 2,000 calories in each meal, which means one will last you a day. You want to keep 2 of those in your bag so that if you're there for a long amount of time, or if you happen to have a passenger with you, then you don't starve to death, because who knows how long it's going to be. Now, if your car happens to be stuck somewhere and the engine still runs, then you definitely want to be able to run the engine to keep warm, which means you need to have gas, which is why it's extremely important to always fill your gas tank if it's a half a tank or under, because you never want to end up in a situation where you don't have enough gas to keep you warm. It may be a little bit more expensive sometimes, like sometimes you won't have the money and you got to run it to empty, but if you end up in a situation where you're stuck in a ditch and the only way to stay warm is to run your engine, you'll be glad that you spent the money to put gas in your car. Now, another thing to talk about is if you happen to be in a situation where you crash the car and you have no idea where you are. If you happen to have cell service, I know that Verizon, who I go through, they have an app on their phone that it'll allow you to send a location to somebody. If you have service, that would be the way to go. And if you have anybody and you happen to call 911 for an emergency situation, they trace your call so they know where you are and they can send you help. But sometimes you may have to get out of your car and go somewhere where you do have service. Now, again, that point, it's extremely important to have a change of clothes so that you, again, don't die of hypothermia. Even if help's on the way, hypothermia can set in quite quickly. The most important set of clothes to have is a good pair of socks. Now, I'm not talking regular socks, I'm talking wool socks. Socks that you would buy for somebody that works construction or something. Some thermal socks are extremely important because you need to remember that you lose most of your body heat through your head and your feet. So if you have warm wool socks and a beanie or a hoodie or something to keep your head warm and covered, that'll definitely help. If you were to happen to have an injury in your car, that's where a good set of first aid kit comes in. Some first aid kits have small tourniquets in them. It's important to remember that you don't want to use a tourniquet unless you absolutely have to, because you cut off the circulation, you run the risk of losing a limb. So you only want to use that in a worst case scenario to where you're going to bleed out if you don't. So while it is important to use one and know how to use one, it's also important to know that if you use one in the wrong situation and you lose a limb, then if it's better to not use it, don't use it. But if you're going to bleed out, use it. And personally, I'd rather lose a limb than a life. So it's important to have one of those. I keep a suture kit in mind to where if I were to have something happen that was small enough that I could patch myself up, I can do that. Painkillers are important to have in case something were to happen where you were to injure yourself. It's important to have antibacterial stuff in there. Band-Aids are good. You want to have everything you could possibly think of to help. Another thing is, if you were to happen to crash somewhere where you can't get out of your car because your seatbelt froze or something, you want to have something that will cut your seatbelt off just in case it were to freeze. If you don't panic, normally you can get your seatbelt off, but there are some situations where you cannot, and that's why it is extremely important to have something in your glove box or somewhere where you can reach it, where it's not going to bounce around and become a projectile. Another thing, they make cell phone chargers now that have a glass breaker on them. It's great to have something like that in case you need to get out of your car quickly and the door's broken shut and you can't get out of your car. So definitely look into something that could break glass if you needed to. A lot of seatbelt cutters, if you were to get one of those, have a glass breaker on them already anyway. So if you have one of those, more often than not, you won't need to worry about it. And if you can get a multi-tool, that is great too, because that means less items to worry about and less bulk in your bag or in your car. These are important things to have in your car because you never know when something bad is going to happen, and it's always best to be prepared. Now, another thing that you would definitely want to have in your car, and this is more to prevent greater injury, is road flares and electric flares. The reason you want to have both is because an electric flare will last a lot longer than a road flare, but a road flare will work just in case you happen to not have batteries in your electric flare. If they've been in there for a while and the batteries die, a road flare does not have that problem. They don't ever die, and unless you get them wet, they don't end up going bad. I definitely recommend having both. If you have to have one or the other, I would suggest getting the regular flares because, again, unless you get them wet, they're not gonna go bad on you. But an electric flare for longevity purposes, as far as if you're out there for 6-8 hours, they're definitely great to have. Thanks for watching Casey's Garage. This has been episode 2 of the How to Not Die series, How to Survive in a Car Crash. If you have any ideas on something that you would like to see, how to survive, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. And thanks for watching Casey's Garage. Feel free to like and subscribe for future episodes, and have a great day.